we're going to introduce one of our big struggles. And I think we alluded to this earlier, maybe in one of our earlier episodes. But in 2013, at the age of 13, one of our daughters, Alexa, was diagnosed with a rare form of muscular dystrophy called facioscapulohumeral muscular dystrophy. That's a big, long word. One of her first challenges was to learn how to spell that and how to pronounce that. But that's a genetic disorder that, and she's very open about this, so we're not sharing anything that she hasn't been very open about. I give her a massive amount of credit from very early on. She has chosen to embrace it and just be what it is. But it's a muscle condition that weakens her skeletal muscles progressively over time. At the time she was diagnosed, she was 13 years old. She was playing competitive soccer. She was playing for the junior high. And she started having some difficulty keeping up. And we'll go into much further details about her process of how she got to her diagnosis and what it did to us, because it was I think the easiest way to say it, it was a very big time of change for the family, and that our family dynamic has never been the same since that. There's no way to sugarcoat when your child gets a lifelong diagnosis. That is a time of stress. And for us, we're going to put this in context of resiliency and what had we celebrated before? What had we done before that put us in a position to handle this? Now, we had mentioned earlier on that we had spent very conscious effort in getting out of debt. And if anybody's gone through any medical sort of stuff, you know lots of financial comes with that. And if you're very fortunate and you have good health insurance, you still have big bills that come with that. And in our case, we had travel and we had hotels and we had, because it wasn't something you could just go down to your local pediatrician and they diagnose. It took months, and it took physical therapists, and it took neurologists, and it took a whole slew of doctors. And we finally ended up down in Charlotte, which is not that far from us, 3 or 4 hours, to a specialist who diagnosed her and everything. But it was a very long journey to get there that had some financial issues to it. And for me, I very, very, very vividly remember coming back from the day of diagnosis. And it was a very tough day. And Alexa, I don't think, was fully understanding what was going on. You and I had a much clearer understanding of what had happened. And I remember halfway back through the drive, I remember the bend in the curve. Yeah, I don't drive that way to Charlotte very often, but when I do, I'm like, oh, that's where I had that thought. And it was, and I'm pretty sure I said this to you at the time, that thank whatever that we had done all the work to be in a good, solid financial position, because that allowed you and I just to focus on helping her and the family through medical. And if you and I had not been in a financial place, or if you and I had not been in a relationship place, that would have been devastating to come through. Because if you aren't strong and if I didn't have you to lean on during that time and we weren't good, it would have just made all the stressors even more. So for me, that is a really rock solid example of making the big decisions, doing the hard work, but celebrating those milestones, building those bonds, strengthening those bonds, really impacted when we hit a time of challenge for the family. That was a lot on that.
I was just thinking, if you can ever be ready for something, we were as ready as you could be, I believe, for something like that, because of all the things you just noted. We had a focus on each other and our finances and our children, and we were as prepared as one can be when you find out that your 13-year-old has a lifelong disorder.
Yeah, it was a big milestone. Now let's clarify a little bit. We weren't out of debt. We were just in a very good working relationship around it. We had very big goals, and we were relationally solid, which is always easier to handle big issues, big challenges when your relationship is solid. And I mentioned in the very first episode that when done right, marriage is a force multiplier. I think this is one of those cases for me, one of those examples where independently it would have been really hard to go through that. It was still very hard, but having someone who you know is equally going through that with you was a good thing. Another point to that is we weren't out of debt, and we didn't know exactly what Alexa's diagnosis really meant for her. There's a variable nature to this. She goes through periods of decline where her muscles will deteriorate faster, and they don't really know when that's going to happen. That can happen in a year period. It can happen over a 5-year period. And at the time, she was pretty mobile, but that was not going to be guaranteed that she was as mobile there. And reality is that was probably going to be her peak mobility because it's a progressive decline of muscles. We had not traveled. We had not done anything, any of our big family things at this point. And we were getting very close. And this time we were being very aggressive. This was, let's get rid of the house debt. This was not consumer debt. This was, let's get rid of the mortgage. We're very close. And I was getting beat up on mental at this time. We were so close, but we weren't there. And we're huge soccer fans. We're huge EPL fans. And one of the trips we really wanted to do is we wanted to go to London to see, we're Chelsea supporters. Sorry if that bothers anybody. We wanted to go see Chelsea play in person. That was something we had really, and that was part of our vision of why we were doing all the work to get out of debt, was so we could save and then do this big trip. And I remember, again, a walk of ours and being very frustrated of, we're close, but we're not there. We don't know how should we go now? Should we stop this? Should we just spend some money and do this? And this is one of those times where the strength of our bond really came in, because you were the one who's like, no, we're super close. Let's do this next 6 months. Let's finish this. Let's stay on schedule. Then we'll go do that. And it was a good bolstering of when my focus to finish the goal had sort of waned, that was very rare for me. I was really very focused on that. You were like, no, we've got a plan. So for me, I think that helped us through that, another point of resiliency. And then fast forward, we finished that goal and we were able to take that trip, and it was awesome. And we've been very fortunate in taking that trip a couple more times. And now when we do that trip, she uses a wheelchair, and it's a very different from that very first one.
Yeah.
I shared a lot on that. Anything else you want on that?
No. I was just
listen to the story.
Because I had forgotten some of it.
Yeah. Again, we rehearse. We don't actually share the stories. We just rehearse.
Yeah, that you had wavered a bit. And I remember it now as you say it. Yeah. And both sides had merit, right? Finishing it off, but also taking a trip before we know how impacted she would be. Once again, though, right decision.
I mean, financially, there was a right decision, and you were clear enough thinking at that moment to keep us on the track to do the right way of financially right. It was a financially responsible way, and we try to be responsible in many areas of our life, and that was an area where, no, this is the responsible way, and we try not to make emotional decisions or snap decisions, and that would have been an emotional decision. And it doesn't mean it would have turned out terrible. It just wouldn't have been the path we were supposed to be on.